Casa de Mont, 11 News Tonight.
This is the CBS Evening News. Connie Chung reporting. Good evening. Authorities in Oakland, California fear tonight that a 10-block section of Interstate 880 is about to collapse. It is just south of the stretch that collapsed and sandwiched during last Tuesday's earthquake. Also late this afternoon, the Commissioner of Baseball announced that Game 3 of the World Series has been rescheduled for this coming Friday at Candlestick Park. CBS News correspondent Jerry Bowen is in Oakland with a live report on the cracks in Interstate 880. Jerry?
Good evening, Connie. As you reported, California transportation officials reported moments ago what they call the probable imminent collapse of a new 10-block stretch of the troubled Oakland freeway. The section in question is just south of the collapsed area behind us. The engineers say the cracks in this new section are growing larger on both the upper decks and the lower decks, but they're holding off evacuation of any neighborhoods for now while they try to shore up the freeway.
Still reveling in the afterglow of Saturday's unexpected success, workers this morning were forced to go slow in the search for any other survivors because of safety concerns. Aftershocks have made the Pancake Freeway more unstable, even more dangerous.
We just can't risk losing the rescue workers. This thing is extremely unstable. At any time it could come down.
57-year-old Buck Helm, the longshoreman whose survival rekindled hope among weary workers, is slightly better today, but kidney failure due to dehydration is a major problem.
We still have some significant concerns about his health, and that he's not out of the woods yet, by any means.
He was pulled out of the rubble through this small opening after being seen waving through another tiny hole cut by engineers checking the structure's stability.
When I first saw the wave, I thought I was hallucinating. And when he went to turn his head, I was confident.
A world of emotion away, in the nearby town of Vallejo, there was mourning for one of those who did not escape the freeway collapse. The Reverend Walter Butler was remembered in song and word by his small congregation.
Please just be patient with us. We're working really hard to get things set up.
And there is no small amount of frustration and grief for the living. In Oakland today, a federal emergency office was finally opened to start providing help to the estimated 14,000 homeless. And their numbers seem to be growing as more and more apartment buildings are declared unsafe, their occupants given little time or choice but to go.
And all of a sudden there's a knock on my door, 2 hours, you've got 2 hours to get out.
The manager told us to just grab what you can. Grab what we can.
Life has become a wrenching, numbing daily battle for many people here, a battle just to be able to look ahead to tomorrow.
Where do we all go to? We have nowhere to go to.
And the numbers of the homeless, perhaps the temporary homeless, continue to grow at this hour. We just received word that the evacuation along the freeway has begun along 8th Avenue. People living in houses nearest the newly troubled Nimitz Freeway that transportation officials say, Connie, is in imminent danger of collapse at this hour.
Now, Jerry, the section is between 7th and 17th Street. Are there any other sections of the Interstate 880 that are beginning to weaken?
Well, we had reports earlier that there was a 5-block section from 17th to 12th that showed some cracks. Suddenly, it's now grown to 10 blocks. The cracking problem has been persistent because of the aftershocks and the settling of the collapsed freeway itself. To my knowledge, this is the extent of the problem at this point.
Jerry, is there any evidence that budget cutbacks in the past contributed to the failure of Interstate 880 to hold up in an earthquake?
Well, there are reports that not only budget cutbacks for improvements of bridges and roads, but also cutbacks in the staff experts who knew something about seismology and proper construction may have played a role in delaying the kind of earthquake reinforcement that could have mitigated some of the disaster, if not here, perhaps elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Jerry Bowen in Oakland. As of tonight, the official death toll in the earthquake is 59, including 38 killed on Highway 880. In the hometown of Buck Helm today, it was rainy and foggy. But in spite of the gloom, the mood was bright. David Dow is there.
In the churches of little Weaverville, California today, they celebrated an answered prayer. Buck Helm, devoted father, respected resident, alive, somehow alive. There was just one word for it.
It was a miracle.
It is a miracle, yeah.
They're calling it the miracle of the Nimitz.
For 4 days, Debbie Borman and other residents watched and prayed, knowing only that Buck Helm was missing and perhaps somewhere in the awful jumble of Highway 880. But there was good reason for hope, they say.
Buck's a survivor. He's one tough guy. And to give up for him is be impossible.
No one pulled harder for Helm's survival than Weaverville's children, who know him well.
He's just a big kid. He's really fun. He loves all the children love him. Some Fridays he would come too, and he'd buy everybody an ice cream.
To me, he has a little bit of Santa Claus in his personality.
Today, Weaverville residents read the headlines and renewed their faith that Buck Helm, now rescued, would somehow recover.
Everybody's hoping that he pulls through. And knowing Buck, he will. He ain't gonna wait that long just to give up now.
I'm still praying and I'm still hoping for the best.
In the Nugget, Helm's favorite restaurant, Lori Hartland already talks about a homecoming celebration, replete with Buck Helm's favorite dessert.
Got free cherry pie for a year, as far as I'm concerned.
And in the Sunday school class of Buck Helm's daughter, they sang today and gave thanks. The town's miracle man, alive. David Dow, CBS News, Weaverville, California.
As we mentioned a moment ago, Baseball Commissioner Fay Vincent announced late today that the World Series will resume Friday night, 3 days later than originally hoped. John Blackstone has more from San Francisco. John?
Connie, there are concerns here that resuming the World Series may seem insensitive to the disaster and to the loss of life, but playing the games is also part of getting life here back to normal, as residents of the shattered Marina District in San Francisco are discovering that's not going to be easy.
What a week this has been, what a week. Because over the marina, it is so terrible.
An earthquake shakes and throws us like dice across a table, making some of us winners and some of us losers.
It has been a Sunday of reflection in San Francisco about the capriciousness of the earthquake's destruction. Scientists are now beginning to understand something of what happened in the city's Marina District on Tuesday.
Liquefaction is a process that changes a solid, saturated sand that can support foundations into a liquid.
The Marina District is built on landfill saturated with water. The energy of the quake released so much underground water that parts of the marina turned temporarily to mud.
The settling that took place during the shaking is predominantly over.
But many buildings in the marina remain too dangerous to enter. This weekend, marina residents are concentrating on salvaging what they can, often with the help of strangers.
Just volunteered. I woke my partner up and said, come on, let's go. Let's do something today.
5 days after the quake, the stress is showing, particularly for those who are realizing they have lost almost everything.
Tempers are short after days of this. I mean, people can just take so much.
Amidst the pain, there is a determination to begin rebuilding. It was in that spirit that the San Francisco Symphony and Opera played a free concert today in Golden Gate Park.
Rebuilding means going back to work, and for commuters, that alone is going to be a challenge. With the Bay Bridge and major freeways unusable, tomorrow morning's commute, the first since the quake, is expected to be a nightmare. Connie?
Thank you, John Blackstone. Still ahead on the CBS Evening News, Frank Courier on the earthquake damage in other areas of Northern California. And later, a look at how the wounds are healing in Mexico City, more than 4 years after its great quake. In Cruz County, near the epicenter of the California earthquake, they tried to adjust today to new realities, to makeshift homes, to the loss of beloved possessions. It was difficult. And as Frank Courier reports, it may be a long time before it gets any easier.
As dawn breaks over quake-battered Watsonville, California, families forced from their homes now live in tents. They lost their church this week and must now worship in school gymnasiums. Many here have little left but their faith.
Well, We're thankful that we are okay, and we can get along.
While the Federal Emergency Management Agency opened its doors today to Watsonville, relief by the truckload poured into shelters where volunteers are overwhelmed, and distribution is sometimes slow to the neediest victims.
Okay, let's get these guys moving.
From Santa Cruz, up winding roads through rugged Redwood Hills near the earthquake's epicenter, rural survivors are coping with property losses more staggering than their big city neighbors.
Something of this magnitude, it's a little overwhelming, and getting back to normal is going to take, at the very least, months, probably years.
In the isolated mountain hamlet of Zayente and surrounding canyons, nearly 85% of the houses have suffered damage totaling $26 million. And like the Grim Reaper, a county building inspector today condemned more houses damaged beyond repair.
Okay, I'm going to post the house here, and it's unsafe to enter or occupy. And I made a record of that.
Road crews bulldozing round the clock are still 3 weeks from clearing landslides that have closed Highway 17, a vital route to the outside world.
Our life link is actually trucks and trailers. And now everything has to be rearranged.
Including attitudes. On top of the more than 2,000 mild earth tremors recorded here since the quake, a Saturday aftershock measured just under 5 in magnitude.
To me, it's a relief. Let them come and let them get done, and in a week we can get back to the process of getting things back in control.
Here in Santa Cruz, where the quake did about $83 million in damage, getting back under control first means reopening about 250 businesses, putting about 2,000 people back to work. Today, tourists flock to this devastated shopping mall to take pictures, while building inspectors must decide here whether anything is safe enough to save or whether rebuilding begins with devastating what is left. Connie?
Thank you, Frank Courier. If current damage estimates hold up, the earthquake will be the most expensive natural disaster ever in this country. And picking up the tab is fast becoming a political issue. Norman Robinson reports from the White House.
President Bush is under increasing pressure from Democrats in Congress to act immediately to find money to help repair the damage caused by the earthquake.
I hope that earthquake will shock the administration into saying, all right, let's work with the Congress.
Today, the American Red Cross received $500,000 from General Motors, the largest private employer in California, but that's a drop in the bucket for what's going to be needed. Damage estimates are as high as $10 billion. Democrats will move on legislation this week to have the federal government contribute $2.5 billion initially and perhaps an additional $3 billion at a later date. The Bush administration today reiterated its position that it's still too early to determine a figure.
I don't think anybody can say what's really needed today. We're still learning about the damage.
But the Democrats say what they've already learned about the damage is enough to warrant tacking on a user tax to shore up the nation's roads and bridges. A large number of them said to be in serious disrepair.
If ever there was a moment to talk about increasing the gasoline tax, now is the moment when people have those pictures of the Nimitz expressway still in their minds.
We can't keep kidding ourselves that we can meet needs, whether it's in education or health care or disasters or transportation or infrastructure, and not pay for it.
The administration today stressed that the president can find the money to pay for damages from existing revenue and that he can keep his promise of no new taxes. Democrats are warning that in the face of a mounting deficit problem, that may not be realistic. Norman Robinson, CBS News, the White House.
Quakes rocked China. 29 people were killed, and 50,000 who were left homeless expect little, if any, help outside. John Chan reports.
Not a single house is left standing in the village of Baotsun, Shanxi province. The row houses of unfired clay were doomed by their own heavy arched roofs. Most of the 1,280 citizens of Baotsun owe their lives to rushing outdoors. One man was trapped attempting to rescue his crippled mother. Their coffins stand in their house under the open sky. Some of the neighbors brought offerings of bread, symbolic nourishment for the souls of their old friends making their long journey to eternity. One man digs for his most valuable possessions, his clothing. Winter is bearing down. The temperature will soon be 35 below zero. There is no talk of earthquake insurance. There is no such thing. In the vast area of the earthquake, hundreds of square miles, there is little evidence of any organized relief effort. No official has appeared in Boatsун to assess the damage or ease the suffering. John Sheehan, CBS News, Beijing.
Engineers and other Mexican earthquake experts head for San Francisco tomorrow to offer their help. They want to share what they've learned from their own quake 4 years ago, a disaster which still haunts the present. The news from San Francisco touched an open wound in Mexico City, where reminders of the great 1985 quake are still part of daily life. Downtown buildings haven't been repaired, and some 1,500 people still live in temporary shelters. For them, even an earthquake in San Francisco can bring tears. I'm so sad for their families, she says. I think of them every day. Mexico City's earthquake was 32 times stronger than the quake in San Francisco. The official death toll was 6,000, but some unofficial estimates run much higher. Hundreds of thousands were left homeless. Since then, the government says it's built 100,000 new housing units. Marilita Contreras says the government told her she'd get new housing, but it doesn't say when. She's not alone. Just 2 days ago, Cuauhtemoc Cárdenas, the nation's leading opposition figure, led a march on behalf of earthquake victims. The government, he says, must do more to help its people. But even as the government struggles to house the homeless, they're learning lessons that will help when the next earthquake strikes.
We know now that we must be careful with the buildings that are in this region and in Mexico City because we expect another strong one.
Mexico City has rewritten its building codes, modeling them after California standards. And construction techniques developed in Mexico City are salvaging some skyscrapers which have waited 4 years for repairs. We're driving pilings into the bedrock, says architect Carlos Hernandez, and using them to reposition the building to make it stand straight again. That's not all Mexico City is doing to prepare for the next great quake, predicted to hit in 10 to 15 years. This time, there may be a warning from seismographs now being installed at the earthquake fault some 200 miles away. Only a 1-minute warning before the quake arrives, but perhaps enough to save some lives.
It was Dean Witter's personal philosophy.
Extra strength Malox Plus. I need the strongest with my husband, the ref.
Extra strength Malox Plus. Strong relief for all your Malox moments.
The Space Shuttle Atlantis is scheduled to return to Earth tomorrow, but earthly weather is pushing up the touchdown time. Bruce Hall reports.
High winds and dust storms in the Mojave Desert are forcing the astronauts to end their globe-circling venture about 3 hours earlier than planned.
The forecast is for the winds to increase 20 gusts to 30, and the winds will stay at those levels, or are forecast to stay at those levels through Thursday.
But forecasters at Edwards believe the winds will be much lighter earlier in the day and provide a chance to land without violating any of the new shuttle safety rules put into place after the Challenger disaster. The astronauts, who are now enjoying their time in weightless environment of space, say the early re-entry will have no impact on the mission.
What we've done is squeeze the timeline a little bit from what it originally was so we can accomplish just about everything that was scheduled.
The astronauts completed filming their portion of a documentary, Exploring the Blue Planet, with a series of views displaying the grandeur and beauty of Earth.
It's just been gorgeous, and I think I can speak for all of us when I say that our world is a beautiful place and we do need to take care of it.
And the Galileo space probe is apparently taking care of itself, still performing perfectly after plowing through a hail of bullet-like particles from a major solar flare. It was the first major test for Galileo, and scientists say it will have to survive many more storms and belts of radiation on its 6-year voyage to Jupiter. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Johnson Space Center.
Crosswords and croissants need Sunday breakfast today.
Started wearing dentures?
Heat-resistant Fix-A-Dent spreads evenly to keep on fixing loose spots, no matter how often it gets hot.
Scab!
Fix-it-dent and forget it.
Nearly 1/3 of the smoke detectors in American homes are not working because of dead or missing batteries. In a fire, they'd be worthless. That's why First Alert created the new light test smoke detector. No smoke detector you can buy is easier to test. You don't even have to stand up. Just wave a flashlight at the gold button, and you know it's working. The new light test smoke detector. Only First Alert gives you this extra protection.
Growing numbers of respectable Englishmen are patronizing places they used to consider pretty shady establishments. Peter Van Sant tells us why the well-off are putting their prized possessions in hock.
The British economy is in turmoil, with interest rates climbing to their highest levels in 9 years.
The English economy just isn't working.
Thousands of homeowners are facing a financial squeeze as their mortgage payments rise with the higher interest rates.
It adds about £250 a month onto my mortgage.
It's bad news for nearly everyone, except for England's burgeoning pawnbrokering industry.
Pawnbrokers, you know, basically always praying for a depression. When the depression sets in, business booms. It's one of those businesses that always booms when everything else is going down the pan.
Britain's banks, traditionally the backbone of money lending, are losing customers to a new generation of pawnbrokers who are appealing to the cash-short, upscale crowd.
They come here with rugs, Persian rugs, and they pull up in taxis. You know, they pull up in a taxi to borrow £100 or something like that.
How much was you looking to borrow?
The pawn shop has become respectable. Edward Wilcox is among the new customers who have much more than a pair of shoes or an old watch to pawn.
That's a 325. 325. 86. 1986 BMW. 4 doors, isn't it, I noticed?
Yeah, it is to do with interest rates. I need to pay some mortgage off and tie myself over for a couple of months and then get back on my feet, you know.
Squire's pawn shop is filled with former playthings of the rich.
This here would be about £50,000 worth, this bracelet.
Diamond-encrusted jewelry, gold necklaces, medallions, Rolex watches, furs, works of art, even a vintage Harley-Davidson motorcycle have been turned in for quick cash.
It is a very convenient way, and I think there's more awareness that it is a very convenient way to get through life without being destitute.
Musician Simon Titley has learned his bass guitar can make more money off stage.
It's just an asset that's sitting around doing nothing. We don't use it, so it's a way of raising some cash without any real hassle.
Charles Dickens once referred to the pawnbrokering industry as a receptacle for misery and distress. But as their economy worsens, some Britons are turning to their local pawnbroker in hopes of avoiding financial misery and distress. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, London.
And that's our news. Dan Rather will be here tomorrow night, and later tonight, be sure and join Bill Plant with the CBS Sunday Night News. I'm Connie Chung in New York. I'll see you again next Saturday night at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 Central. Thank you for joining us, and for all of us at CBS News, good night.
Cosmopolitan called it innovative. Do our viewers know something you don't? CBS This Morning, weekdays.
This is CBS.